All right, so recently some TikTokers have been trying to cancel Bobby Lee over the Tijuana story. If you're not familiar with that, he used to tell this story where he went down to Tijuana and he essayed some young girl, I guess is the best way to describe it. I can't go into too much detail here because it is pretty graphic, but you could find it somewhere, I'm sure, on the internet. I think on Reddit, I'm sure they have it, or on Patreon. I talked about this on my account and I gave my opinion on it and talked about the TikTokers that are trying to cancel him. But people have been trying to cancel him for years now. I guess it finally just gained enough traction to where he had to talk about it, or he's just sick of hearing about it, probably. It's best to just put this in the past. Now if somebody brings it up, it's just like, he's talked about it, it's over with. Even though those people are already like, it's a fake story, we know about it. Most of his fans knew about this story and they're just like, it's fake. Or a lot of them are like, it's probably real, but we just don't care. We can separate the art from the artist or whatever. Because a lot of OG Bobby fans, fans that listen to his Opie and Anthony appearances, him on DVD, ASA, him on like just every TigerBelly episode they ever had, just people that are obsessed with his stuff. Those people, after hearing him address this, they almost want to believe the terrible stuff that happened in his life. Honestly, people were saying like, wow, it's disappointing that Bobby wasn't murdered, which, it sounds ridiculous and you're like, oh, those people are joking around. No, I think they're being serious because
it's still real to me, damn it.
Bobby, the way he addressed this, he basically said his whole life is a lie. Like every story he's ever told is fake, and he's like, you guys are so stupid for believing that. I'm just doing this for attention. Which if you're a big Bobby Lee fan and you've been listening to him talk about his personal life and his relationships and you like him because he's honest and genuine, and then all of a sudden he's like, nope, it's all a lie. I mean, you basically have to believe he's lying about lying all the time. Like obviously sometimes he lies, he's a comedian, he makes up stuff, he exaggerates. But the reason why people like him is because they like hearing about his stories. And nobody's going to listen to his podcast if he's making everything up. I'm sorry. Like now that the cat's out of the bag and Bobby just said everything's a lie and you believe him, go listen to that podcast and treat everything like it's a lie. It's not going to be very interesting. People listen to him because he talks about real stuff, like real dark stuff sometimes. And not a lot of people hear about that stuff. Not a lot of people are willing to talk about that. So that's a draw to his podcast. And he's basically like, I'm just making up all this crazy stuff to get attention and make money and get famous. I know this is the kind of stuff that sells. And, his fans, his original fans, I'm sure don't like that. Even though I think a lot of them are like, hey, he's just doing this to save his own ass. I understand. He's kind of like giving him a wink, like, you guys get what I'm trying to do here. But he did get a little too carried away with it. Also, Kalila, oh God, she only makes things worse.
I always want to talk about it, defend myself, but, there was a part of me that was just like, I just don't want to open up the curtain and go, this is how it all works.
Because you want to assume that people know better and that they have the mental capacity
they
to
don't.
and be like, you know what? That's an absurd, obviously comedic, crazy story that never happened. Like,
so it's a comedy. I'm a comedian. I'm not Lex Friedman. And I hate giving shit away. Mm-hmm. I was never my guy with Down syndrome.
Surprise, everyone.
But also, like 90% of your act, even today, is not real shit about me. You talk about crazy shit about me that's like not fucking real. I don't know, like it's pretty obvious that, at least for me, even before I knew you, like I'm going to Bobby Lee for comedy, not autobiographical nonfiction.
Yeah.
Like that's just as simple as abilities to hear something like that and be like, that's obviously fucking stupid.
I'm not serious about anything. There's a reason why one of our slogans is I lie to win.
Yeah.
But also, if I told people on this podcast or any other podcast the way it actually is, right? Like the facts and the truth of how stories actually unfold, nobody would listen.
Everyone would be asleep.
It's so boring.
Life is boring.
Like my life is like, I wake up, I have a burrito, right? Then I play 2 or 3 hours of Hogwarts, you know what I mean? Then I try to write, but I don't. I just stare at a piece of paper, right? And then I'll go to the comedy store, right? Do a set. I'll go to the spa, come home. That's every day of my life. When I was 17 years old, I got sober, right? And that's when, like, nothing after that wild happened in my life because, you're just this guy. You can't put yourself in situations that are dangerous and this and that because it's like you don't want to relapse. And I stayed sober after that for 13 years. I just have always had this, like, sober life of, like, calling your sponsor or, or going to this meeting. It's like And if I said that on a podcast the way it really is, it would be not entertaining.
So again, anybody that's listened to Bobby for a while, I feel like should realize he's kind of lying here, which, they probably understand. Like, he's doing this because he's in hot water right now. He's doing whatever he can to get out of it. And, I think it is ridiculous that people are trying to cancel him now over this. Like, if a sponsor drops him, I think I read he might have lost a deal with Amazon. If that's true, I think that's pathetic because this story has been out there for a while. It's not very hard to find. I mean, you just search Bobby Lee on Reddit and you scroll down a little bit, I'm sure it'll come up. So these companies that worked with him and are now cutting ties with him over this story, clearly they're not really doing their job. Or they've heard the story already, and now they're just being spineless and they're like, oh, now that some TikTokers, some feminist woke TikTokers going after him, now I'm going to drop him. It's like, you knew about this story, or you should have known. You're not doing your job. Let's just say that. So it's kind of ridiculous, I think, if anybody drops him. So I don't think he should be canceled. I think that's insane. The fact that people all of a sudden are like, well, now we got to get rid of him. But unfortunately, that's just how it works. I think Bobby will be fine, though. Obviously, he's always going to have an audience, and his fans already knew about this. And some TikToker talking about it, that's not going to change anything. But like I said, I think this might hurt him the most. The fact that he's saying everything's a lie and my fans are stupid to believe all that. Because obviously his fans believe a good amount of it because nobody will listen to him if they believe it's all a lie. I mean, obviously he exaggerates sometimes. He'll get details wrong in stories. But for the most part, there is truth to these stories. Like, Bobby is not just some average guy that lives a boring life and he just can think of crazy stuff to say. He actually lives crazy experiences, and people are like, nothing like this happens in real life. You people are in denial. I mean, crazy stuff happens. And other comedians have been on his podcast talking about some of the stuff they've done. And this isn't referring to the Tijuana story he got canceled for, but him and Ari Shaffir talked about going down to Tijuana and going to a brothel. So that happened. Unless Ari's making this up too. Unless they just knew to make up some Tijuana story. Like, how deep does it go? Like, Bobby is a crazy dude. There's no denying that. He's always whipping his dick out. He's trying to get people to touch it. And, he's on those morning shows. He's grabbing the girls and, like, trying to make out with them and stuff. I mean, he's done this stuff. There's no denying that. And he has crazy stories. Like, here's him on Joey Diaz's podcast talking about this threesome he had. And the detail he goes into here, he names people. There's no chance he's making this up.
The girl, I can't say her name because she's still around, and we did the threesome, and he was so selfish because he would pull her up to his side of the bed, and I didn't want to touch him, so you know what I ended up doing? Going to the side of bed and just watching them. And we also, can I just say something? We all laughed so much. It was like the funnest sex I've ever had, and I did it with Aaron Cater and Brian Etheridge once in Vegas too. That was a fivesome.
I was gonna say, where's
that was
the
a
girls?
fivesome.
Two girls?
Yeah, it was two
Where
girls.
did you meet the two girls at?
Dude, this is so gross. So, you know Steve Shrippa?
Yeah,
So Shrippa, Riviera.
yeah.
So he calls me and he goes, hey, because Dice used to call me Ching, right? so Steve Shrippa used to call me Ching, right? As just Ching. That's what they used to say, not racial.
And there are countless examples of this. I mean, you just watch Bobby on a podcast for 10 seconds and you could tell he's a crazy dude. And it's funny that people, I guess now, they just believe it's all an act. It's all completely fake. None of this is real. There's no way comedians are actually out there having threesomes and going to brothels in Tijuana. That's just fantasy stuff. They're all just making that up to get attention. I mean, do people know what comedians are like? Comedians are crazy. Like Joe Rogan's always saying, he's like, man, every comedian I know has a messed up childhood. We're all broken people. He's always saying that. So why is it so hard to believe that Bobby's like that? And again, I'm not saying this Tijuana story is true or not. Who knows for sure? My opinion, I believe some of it. I think he went down to Tijuana, which I can guarantee you he's done that before. And I think one of the times he was down there, he saw a girl that looked younger and he maybe didn't know her age, just a younger looking girl. And then he started messing around with her and she started crying. That's what I believe the story is. I don't know for sure though. You guys can make your own decision. That's what it sounds like to me. And it's funny that people are saying like, oh, you're gullible enough to believe some comedians' crazy stories. Well, you're gullible enough to believe that Bobby basically made up a whole lifestyle that he's been talking about on podcasts for over 15 years, like if you count radio. And he somehow stuck with it and just played this character for that long and never broke character. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm just a normal dude. I just sit at home playing video games all day. I've never done anything interesting or crazy. My life is so boring. I just have to make shit up. I mean, to believe that is ridiculous. Like, here's somebody on Reddit that's been listening to Bobby for 10 plus years, it sounds like, and they said He does not make up such detail and good stories on the spot. He usually tells short, made-up stories that he quickly admits was just BS. It is possible every non-PC story was made up, sure, but it's also possible he wants to stay in Hollywood and not double down on these stories anymore. I lean towards the latter, especially the Tijuana story. As we know, he used to go down there with other comedians, unless they also made it up too. Yeah, so I feel like real Bobby Lee fans could probably put the pieces together here. He's clearly just trying to do this to save his career, which I understand. I mean, what are you going to do in this situation? And the best way to do it is be like, I'm a comedian, I lie. Yeah, of course. But he went a little too hard with it, so I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about it. Let me know down in the comments. Make sure you go check out my Patreon account. I just posted a video about Andrew Schultz and Whitney Cummings. They just did a podcast that was insanely awkward. There's so many weird moments in that. So if you want to see that, go check it out. And then also hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you at the next video.